always told that a elastic is not a bracelet, so you're not supposed to leave it on your wrist, yeah? Anybody else? All right, that was an incredible conversation. I'm not going to hold you up because I think this next one is just as exciting. The digital realm is brimming with potential. But with potential and advancements come with countless challenges. And one of the biggest challenges is trust. So how do we navigate the global trust crisis? The importance of ethical standards and the need for regulatory modernization in healthcare. Our next guests are here to answer that and more profound questions like this. How do we ensure that trust remains the bedrock of our most important system, our healthcare system? So please join me in welcoming Chief Officer of Innovation, Labs, and New Ventures, Debbie Gamble.
Morning, everyone. Many of you may remember clips of Mark Zuckerberg in 2019, where he appeared to be saying, imagine this for a second. One man with total control over billions of people's data. All their secrets, their lives, their futures. I owe it all to Spectre. Spectre showed me whoever controls the data controls the future. While this playful nod to Ian Fleming's famous villain was humorous, it was convincing enough that many initially believed it to be genuine. But of course, the video was entirely fabricated, an early example of deep fakes. It almost seems quaint now, doesn't it? But let's think about how quickly and ubiquitously this kind of technology and the challenge of verification has become. Over the past few years, our challenge of discerning truth has grown as questions of authenticity become commonplace. In this era, our data and our identities are floating in a vast ocean of cyberspace. We're not just managing bytes, but we're also stewarding our identities, shaping narratives, and defining boundaries. And of course, there's AI, specifically generative AI, which has emerged as both our guide and our test, accelerating the digitization of our trusted institutions and of our realities, leading us to a future where we ask AI for advice about our finances, our education, even our health. And at the heart of these conversations is the topic of trust. In an age where data is power and trust is our most precious currency, we need a robust framework to create guardrails. One where authenticity, inclusivity, and relevance are cornerstones of design, development, and use. Every time we open an app, make a digital transaction, or browse the web, we're not just interacting with a screen. We're laying out fragments of our identity. Each byte or pixel reflects who we are, our choices, and our values. They are, in essence, parts of our ever-evolving digital self. In healthcare, our digitized medical records form a unique digital DNA. And as AI enters this realm for diagnostics or personalized treatments, the emphasis on trust is magnified. Misinformation and data breaches can have direct consequences on our well-being. So both patients and practitioners need to have confidence in the digital tools they use. There's no better person to speak to the digital future of healthcare than our next guest, Dr. Zayna Khayat. Zayna is a leader in the future of health. In fact, she has recently been recognized as one of the top 10 women shaping the digital health landscape in Canada. Zayna holds numerous strategic leadership roles, including adjunct professor, health sector strategy at the Rotman School of Management, advisor at Teladoc Health Canada, and most recently at Deloitte, where she has joined them as their in-house health futurist, which sounds like a very cool role. Elevate, please join me in welcoming Zayna Khayat to the Elevate stage. So Zayna, thank you for joining us, and I think we should start off by exploring the notion of digital trust in healthcare. So this might sound like an odd question, but let's kick us off with telling us what is healthcare and what does the notion of digitization mean in that space?
Yeah. So I think we have to really understand there's a difference between health and healthcare. Health is the result. Health is how you feel. Healthcare is the services, the products that help us create health, maintain health, restore health, and they're often done by third parties. 80% more of the time, all of you in this room, you're self-managing your own health. But sometimes that 20%, you need to outsource your agency over your health to a third party, and that's when you enter into health care. And so in this context, you're outsourcing your agency over something so sacred, so sensitive. Maybe there's nothing more sacred or sensitive, we can debate. And therefore, I heard the word bedrock. Trust has underpinned the industry of healthcare for 150 years of modern medicine, well before digital. And so in that context, we anchor trust around, I would say 3 words. One is transparency. It's got to be clear why those people are doing things to you and to your body. That could be life or death. Authenticity and benevolence. There's this inherent assumption that people are doing it for the right thing, for the right good, not for some nefarious reason. So that's kind of the context of trust in a healthcare world.
I love those principles. In my world of payments and verification, we think about, there's always 3 things, right? So we also love the notion of a framework with 3 key principles, and those principles for us are, it has to be authentic, it has to be inclusive. We heard yesterday a lot about the value and the importance of inclusivity, but it also has to be relevant. And at the intersection of authenticity and inclusivity is the notion of opportunity, where people can get to build or create. And the intersection of inclusivity and relevance is about access, to make sure that everybody has access to our new digital reality. And then when we think about authenticity and relevance, it's really about giving the end user control over their data. So do those 3 principles also apply to how you look at healthcare?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll tell you why. So remember, I said the foundational principles of trust in analog healthcare. So reminder, we've had 150 years of analog healthcare and medicine. I believe we're last place, if not tied for last, in terms of digital modernization, right next to 2 other asset-intensive industries, construction and mining. Even agriculture is now a digital sector, not an analog sector. So absolutely those principles come through because digital kind of came to healthcare around 2008. That was already a decade after e-commerce and the internet and all of society was, uprooted by digital. And I would normally add about a 15-year tax to Canadian modernization, which is just what it is. So we're just babies at this in Canada. Maybe 2020 we got going. And so unlike, let's say, financial services, if your trust gets breached in a digital world in healthcare, there's not really recourse. You don't just get your $400 back. you can't really be made whole. And so these three principles, absolutely. Let me just unpack them a bit. Remember, authenticity was one of mine, but it has a whole other lens in a digital layer. We estimate, by the way, that about 70% of what's done today in analog healthcare does not need to be done in the physical realm. So that is a lot of scaling of trust that, your principles are. And so, if you think about it, we had trust through visual cues. You saw the lab coat. You went to a place called a hospital, so you saw nurses buzzing around. You saw your clinician's degree on the wall. If we move into this digital realm, we need completely new anchors to convey trust, and those have not been yet created. There's lots to do, for example, digital credentials. So on inclusive, look, healthcare has to work for everyone. It's a universal principle and a value of Canadians. Now you're outsourcing your agency at a time you're most vulnerable. It skews elderly. It skews people with, let's say, mental health challenges. So, we already had massive equity gaps in access and experience in the analog realm. So there are two schools of thought that the digital realm will both widen those inequities. So for example, you can't get good Wi-Fi in Northern Canada. Right. You can't afford a data plan to be able to participate in this 70% I just talked about. Literacy, haptics, visual, hearing, these things are a challenge in the digital realm and need to be designed for. On the other hand, it opens up, or closes the equity gaps because you can now get access to people who could not live in a city center, for example, to access the best places. And then finally on relevant, in a healthcare world, we try to manage risk. So to confirm your identity, if you've ever tried to access your own data, it's like DEFCON 7 security. I have to remember my puppy's left eyeball color, and then you can't. And so I think in healthcare, we tend to not manage risk, we exclude risk. And so I find we do swing too far on the relevance side. And so I think that creates a terrible experience for people. It might even create mistrust if we overdo it on relevance. So I think we've got a lot of work to do on that front.
We definitely do. In my world of payments, I think we've done a pretty good job of getting better at knowing our customer. But, right across the board in many industries, we have lots of work to do to ensure that there is confidence in the capabilities. Earlier this year, you and I were on stage at an event, and you shared a stat with me that kind of blew my mind around the lifespan. So I'm wondering if you could share that with our audience today.
Yeah, so I co-authored a book called The Future of Aging, and we were exploring what's going to happen with human life extension. Depending on the expert, there are a group of us futurists who believe that a baby born today will live on average to 150 years old. Okay, so lifespan is extending. Our species stayed alive to about 18 years for 99.9% of our time on this earth. And so the new job to be done of healthcare isn't just to extend lifespan, which we'll get into, but for your health span to match your lifespan. And there's no way we'll be able to do that if we keep doing things in an analog way. We'll never reach enough people.
I mean, health span and lifespan, even that now, okay, that's a whole new concept for us to think about that in different ways. But clearly, there's an argument here where we have to get this right, especially if, our children or children's children are going to be living for that long. We can't rely on analog or industrial age architecture. This is so important to our well-being. Back to last year, again on this stage, I had the opportunity to chat with entrepreneur, author, and just general wonderful human being, Vivek Wadhwa. And we chatted about the notion of looking at cancer as a data problem. And, even that also blew my mind, is that you could actually look at something that affects so many of us as a data problem. I'm wondering how you think about that.
Yeah, so first of all, Vivek Wadhwa is probably my favorite thinker in healthcare and in the world. I give my Future of Health talk 8 times a week, and I've got 2 Vivek Wadhwa quotes. One of them that really astounds me is that he says that data science will do more for medicine than all of the life sciences combined. okay? Think of insulin that was discovered just down here, immunizations, MRI machines, vaccines, pales in comparison to what data science will do to health and to humanity and to the sector. So what's that about? You know, that cancer is a data science. You know, if you step back, when we digitize healthcare, it really is going to kind of create three pools of value. One is it will be connected and seamless, and all the friction will come out, and things will actually talk to each other. That's the holy grail. That's going to be awesome. The second is that it will create an intelligence layer that underpins everything we do, and that's because the digitization will produce this exhaust called data, so we can have near real-time information to solve problems. And then the last is it absolutely will be designed for security, safety, all that. So the intelligence layer is what Vivek's speaking to, and what excites me is not only will this reinvent cancer, but pick any population, dementia, gastrointestinal illness, mental health. Our kids are going to look back at how we diagnosed mental illnesses and gave you like psychotropics and a little bit of talk therapy and be like, is this bloodletting? So it will reinvent everything. And again, futurists predict that, you know, the top three sources of death and burden in the world right now is cancer, cardiovascular, and some respiratory diseases. Those will not make the top five. Illness will not be what kills people. It'll be geopolitical, it'll be climate, it'll be all the accidents. It won't be medicine because of data.
That's kind of crazy, isn't it? When you I mean, it also gives you a lot of hope.
Yeah, it's like polio. We don't really talk about it except in some anti-vax communities.
True. So we're here to talk about trust and data, and you know, globally we're experiencing a trust crisis. We heard that also yesterday, and I don't think that can be denied. One only needs to look at social media to find misinformation, disinformation. And society is questioning the truth of our traditional institutions, and how, you know, governments and our community at large can address some of this. So how do you think, what do we need to do to move forward? How do we fix this?
So I think this disinformation, and I kind of alluded to it in my little polio poke, absolutely, as we all know, poked its head during the COVID pandemic. You know, I wish that was our biggest problem in healthcare right now. You know, it's not. It was kind of bad at the time. I'll come back to that. You know, the biggest problem right now in healthcare that is threatening trust is access. And you have that as kind of your point between relevance. 6.5 million Canadians do not have access to primary care. If you don't have primary care, like a family clinician, you can't get specialists, you can't get drugs, you can't get labs, you can't get any, it's your gateway. 6.5 million don't. This is unheard of in our country. Wait lists of 4 months to 4 years for surgery, for access to specialists, especially in mental health care. You can't get a nursing home, et cetera, et cetera. So that is actually breaking trust, because at the time when you've decided to outsource your agency to a third party, it's not available for you. And, you know, we're paying, you know, a lot of our taxation goes to this thing. So that's the big one. I will just say on misinformation, though, look, there's been a reckoning in the public institutions of healthcare around, we really missed the mark using antiquated methods to educate the public and engage the public. And so there's a bit of a redo of public health coming out of COVID, because we did not realize what we are up against with the conspiracy machines and all these channels. So it's a reckoning. It's just not in the top 10 problems today in healthcare. We've got a lot of more.
So we've got some basic problems. We've got some analog problems to fix, and we've got the tools and the capabilities, I believe, to at least remove some of the friction from the access problem. Let's have a little fun before we close out. So complete this sentence, if you would. Trust is another word for.
So I'm going to steal this, and somebody find who said it, but I've seen it and I use it. So I say trust is a confident relationship with the unknown. What do you think it is?
I'll go with the C's too. So I think it's definitely confidence, certainty. I think we have to go back to that authenticity, inclusive relevance. So confidence, certainty, and for it to be ubiquitous, it's got to be, we have to have a level of comfort to be able to use that. So clearly, you know, there's opportunities for us to address some of these things. Zayna, thank you so much for today's chat. What's the one thing you'd like the audience to take away today?
So 2 things, if you're not in the sector, we need you. We need your capabilities, your tech stacks, your customer experience. So come help us, we need it. And 2, if you or your family or anyone is interacting with the formal system, you're outsourcing your agency, demand more. Do not tolerate a 19th century experience.
I love that. I love that. So this discussion has been wonderful as always. Thank you very much for that. There's lots of opportunities for us ahead, and for any of you who want to listen a little bit more to Zayna and I's conversation, you can join us at the Everyday Trust Series. You can see the QR code here. But let's keep working together to foster a more trustworthy landscape, and please join me in thanking
Thank you, Debbie.
Zayna for a great chat.